Call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Mr.
Clarke.
Our first item this evening is a first of two presentations. This presentation is from the Community Energy Association. I'd like to invite Ms. Patricia Bell to come forward, and she's here to present on the Climate and Energy Award presentation.
Welcome, Ms. Bell.
So I'm Patricia Bell. I'm head of the planning at Community Energy Association. I'm very pleased to be here tonight representing the sponsors of the 2016 award program, the Community Energy Association, the Province of BC, UBCM, Fortis BC, BC Hydro, and the Real Estate Foundation of BC. As I congratulate Acting Mayor O'Neill, distinguished councillors, and Coquitlam staff on receiving the Climate and Energy Action Award in Corporate Operations category for the energy conservation measures implemented under your Corporate Strategic Energy Management Plan, as well as an honourable mention in the Public Collaboration category for the Empower Me program. So I know that the Honourable Mary Polak, Minister of Environment, was very pleased to present the plaques to Mayor Stewart at UBCM, but we do like to come and congratulate everybody as a whole, obviously, because it's an achievement for the whole city. CEA is a non-profit. We've been in place for over 20 years, originally created by UBCM and the province to help local governments in BC with energy planning and greenhouse gas emission reductions. And our mission is to build capacity and accelerate action, and obviously by recognizing achievement through the awards, we hope to do that. So there were 20 applications this year across 3 categories, and the judges selected your applications for several reasons. On the corporate operations side, they respected the implementation of over 70 energy conservation behaviors, which resulted in a greenhouse gas emissions reduction of 1,400 tons during a period of unprecedented growth, and the judges specifically noticed that. The achievement also of carbon neutrality and saving of nearly $4 million in heating and electricity costs at the city, again, during a time of growth. The savings achieved will pay for all of the investments required in energy conservation by June 2017, which is a payback period of only 8.5 years. So the judges were very impressed with that. On the public collaboration side, Coquitlam's participation in the Empower Me program received an honorable mention because the Empower Me program is a very unique program, providing energy conservation guidance to Canada's newcomers in a culturally appropriate way, and it's at no cost to users. The program has successfully recruited over 1,400 energy champions across the 3 municipalities that are participating, and will provide for more than 8,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions over time. And each participating household is saving about $200 a year on their energy bills because of the work through that program. Very impressive program. I also wanted to note that the judges were very impressed. You also made a 3rd application under the Community Planning and Development category, and you were in the top 3 on that one as well. The judges felt that your plan was very ambitious and comprehensive, and they encourage you to apply again in about 1 or 2 more years when you have a few more actions under your belt, because they were really impressed with that plan as well. So the initiatives of Coquitlam provide an inspiring example, we feel, for communities in BC and across Canada. And as the Community Energy Association, we share everything that we learn with other communities across Canada, and your initiatives are highlighted on our website and brought up in presentations that we do throughout the year for various organizations. Ooh, and as promised, this year, the award winners are featured in the December issue of Municipal Magazine. So if you get Municipal Magazine in December, look for Coquitlam's description of the projects there. So Community Energy Association is a collaborative organization. Our board, we have a board structure and a member structure. Our members include both the utilities, representatives from provincial government, other leading local governments, educational institutions, and transit agencies. They meet quarterly, and we provide updates on all the work that we're doing. And as a winner this year in the corporate category, Coquitlam will receive a 1-year free membership in Community Energy Association. And so this means you can attend the quarterly meetings either in person or on phone. It could be a staff member or a counselor who attends. So we'll be sending a letter to staff shortly to outline some of the details on that. You're also listed in our membership directory, and your logo will be on our webpage for the year of free membership and in all the presentations that we do. So once again, on behalf of Community Energy Association and all the sponsors, I congratulate you on your impressive work. And I now invite Acting Mayor O'Neill down to receive the plaques, and the rest of council is welcome to come down and be in the photograph as well. We have 2 plaques.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bell. And before we stand up there, you're looking at us and thanking us. We didn't do a lot of work here. A lot of the work was by staff to get this done. So you're going to be thanking us. We're going to be thanking staff. We had to vote yes or no on these programs, and it was pretty easy to vote yes on them when they save money and cut greenhouse gas emissions at the same time, pay for themselves. So yes, so I'm pleased to come up there on behalf of the city. Mr. Clarke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our second item is our second presentation. It involves Coquitlam branch number 263 of the Royal Canadian Legion and pertains to the commemoration of service and the Canadian mission in Afghanistan. I'd like to invite the delegation to come forward at this time.
Wow.
Get the engineer into it.
There we go.
Maybe hold on to it.
Well, welcome.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, everybody. I'd just like to start out by saying that I'm honored to be here along with the rest of our delegation, and thank you all for having us. So, following the attacks on September 11, 2001, Canada committed to assisting our allies in any way possible. As such, in December of 2001, Canada deployed its first troops to Afghanistan in order to help topple the Taliban regime there. Over the next 12 years, we would become engaged in the longest war in our nation's history. Over our time in Afghanistan, in excess of 40,000 Canadians will have served in many capacities. The overwhelming vast majority of these have been drawn from the Canadian Armed Forces, both regular and reserve, and have come from all 3 branches, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force. Canada, as part of its whole-of-government approach, would also deploy other resources. These included Correction Services officers, RCMP officers, Canada Border Services officers, and Department of Foreign Affairs diplomats. By the end of our mission, 159 Canadians had paid with their lives, and over 2,000 have been wounded. In October of 2009, as part of a program that saw Canadian soldiers keep in touch with their hometowns, the City of Coquitlam presented a city flag to Warrant Officer Elik Powell for him to fly on his base while deployed in Kandahar. Upon his safe return in June of 2010, Warrant Officer Powell returned that flag to the city. That flag has now been placed in this box and mounted along with the names of those Coquitlam residents who volunteered to serve their country in Afghanistan during Canada's engagement there. It is our hope that this commemorative memorial will be shown here in the city of Coquitlam and will act as reminders of the ongoing dedication of our local citizens and their willingness to answer our nation when called. I'd like to keep this short and simply finish by thanking the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 263, for getting this project moving and for providing the colour party this evening. I'd like to thank our RCMP Honour Guard, both of whom are veterans of the mission in Afghanistan and both of whom have worked here in Coquitlam Detachment. I'd like to thank the 39th Canadian Brigade Group, who assisted us in finding the names of the Canadian Armed Forces personnel from Coquitlam who deployed to Afghanistan. To date, we have only been able to find 9 individuals. However, it is hoped that as time goes on, more names will be added to this piece. Special thanks goes to the City of Coquitlam staff, Jay, Karen, and Manisha, who made this presentation possible on such short notice, and as well as to the City Council and for their support in this endeavour. I'd like to thank Sergeant Colin Kelly, Canadian Armed Forces Combat Camera Unit, who took this photo in August of 2009 in Kandahar, Afghanistan, as well as Bob McIntyre, the artist who has assembled this piece. Of course, I would especially like to thank our assembled Canadian Armed Forces veterans present tonight, who ultimately are the reasons we are gathered here. They are Corporal Aaron Bedard of the 1st Combat Engineer Regiment, Sergeant Brian Kopp, British Columbia Regiment, Duke of Connaught's Own, Corporal Tim Laidler, British Columbia Regiment, Duke of Connaught's Own, Corporal Andrew Tan, Royal Westminster Regiment, and Sergeant Robert Veltman, Seaforth Highlanders of Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. I don't think we got your name.
Oh, I'm Sergeant Gregor Aiken. I also served in Afghanistan.
Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for this presentation and for returning the Coquitlam flag to us. I can assure you that it will be proudly displayed at City Hall. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge why Mayor Stewart is not with us tonight. He is currently traveling to Korea, where on November 11th, he will participate in a ceremony of remembrance at the United Nations Memorial Cemetery of Korea, where nearly 400 Canadians are buried. In the Korean conflict, over 26,000 Canadian volunteers answered the call for duty there, and 516 paid the ultimate sacrifice to give the fledgling nation of South Korea a chance to enjoy the liberties and peace that we all enjoy in Canada. And tonight, we recognize the valor and the service of those who also answered the call of duty and supported the mission to Afghanistan. On behalf of Council, I want to thank the members of the Canadian Legion Branch 263, the Colour Party, the Canadian Armed Forces veterans, and the members of the RCMP who joined us this evening. And I especially want to thank the many Coquitlam residents, as well as the men and women from across Canada that served our nation in Afghanistan, some of whom are here tonight, of course. Remembrance Day continues to shed an important light on those that served our country in the First World War, the Second World War, and the Korean War, the Afghan conflict. We have no veterans of the First World War among us anymore, and precious few from the Second or the Korean War. What some might not recognize is how many Canadians served our country in Afghanistan. These two are our vets, and I'm thankful that we have the opportunity tonight to pay tribute to their service. Canadian Armed Forces conducted operations in Afghanistan for more than 12 years, as you pointed out. The activities included combat, security, development, support, and training operations. As you said, more than 40,000 Canadian Armed Forces members were deployed to Afghanistan, making it the largest deployment of Canadian Armed Forces personnel in half a century. On behalf of our Council, our staff, and our community, I want to again thank you. Thank those from Coquitlam, especially who served in this important mission. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Now, For the viewing audience at home, I also want to encourage the community to join us to contribute to a project that honors those who served our country. Throughout this week and leading up to November 11th, we are hosting a series of Coquitlam Remembers events at Blue Mountain Park. We're inviting residents to paint poppies on the lawn at Blue Mountain Park near the corner of King Albert Way and Veterans Way. You can also write personal messages on yellow ribbons, which are tied to the trees in Blue Mountain Park. The ribbons will be kept until November 18th, at which point they will be transcribed and forwarded to Veterans Affairs Canada. And finally, we hope everyone will join us. We'll join the Royal Canadian Legion members this Friday on November 11th as they lead us in the annual Remembrance Day services being held at Blue Mountain Park. All the details for this are on the city website, and you know how to reach that. So, how many ways can we say thank you? I think it's thank you very much. And I know that you'd like to make a formal presentation of that to us and to Council, and I invite Council to come up again here, and we can formally receive that. Thank you.
Let's go, folks. Great. Okay. Get myself kicked out. I haven't been invited. Okay, hang on a sec, folks. You guys look fabulous. Look good. This is an important photograph. You, sir? This way? Wait, oh, there's right there, right there. You guys, we're going to move you just because you've been so perfect. Go a little bit to your left. Doesn't make a difference, but because you're perfect. Oh, I like the sound in here. This is great. Okay, folks. Everybody got the picture? Do the chest for me? I'm going to draw. How you guys doing up front there? Is that getting heavy?
One hiding in the back.
Who's hiding? I can see everybody. Is there someone hiding back there? Unless they're... Oh, Jesus, you ever hide? Whoa. Okay, he's lying in front. Get over there. Come on.
Save the best for, oh, see? Now the side looks better. That's what you guys were missing. Okay, gentlemen and ladies, does that monitor go? Never mind. Let's go down. Perfect, just like that. Just ask. That's all they say. Hold on a sec, folks. Are you ready? This is great. Beautiful. Nobody move. Sir, can you go in a little bit to your right? A little more. Just one bit. Ah, like that. Beautiful. Everybody looking at me. I can see one. Ties are straight. Hands. Ladies and gentlemen, hands to the side. Remember when I talked about this? Come on. No white caps playing on this team, I don't think, right? Okay, here we go. Fabulous. And again, great smiles. Beautiful. Isn't it gorgeous? Best looking group shot I've done all night. What do you think? This is a good looking group shot?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
Especially when you're not looking. That's really good.
That's great, folks. There we go. Oh, we're still shooting. Sorry.
Don't move.
Don't move. Thank you. Oh, you got it?
I can't do it with all your lights.
Hey, give me your camera. I'll shoot it from here.
It's okay.
You're going to want to buy one of my pictures. I'll sell it to you for free.
Okay.
Thanks, folks.
So I can have it on the Legion website.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get it. We'll get it.
And I don't know how they would. No. 262? Right. And I'm informed, as we're settling down, that Legion Branch 263 is still looking for volunteers to help sell poppies tomorrow. So you can look them up, Legion Branch 263, if you want to help sell poppies. We back to order again, Councillor Asmundson and others. Mr. Clarke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next item, item 3, pertains to the minutes of the public hearing held on Monday, October 24th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Zerillo, seconded by Councillor Reid. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is minutes of the regular council meeting held on Monday, October 24th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Towner, seconded by Councillor Zerillo. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is minutes of the Universal Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 13th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Zerillo, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Next item, item 6, concerns minutes of the Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 20th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Zerillo. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is the informal notes of the Coquitlam 125 Anniversary Steering Task Force meeting of Tuesday, October 11th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Marsden. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item number 8 pertains to the minutes of the Multiculturalism Advisory Committee meeting of Tuesday, October 18th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor Zerillo. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 is the first report of staff. It pertains to the fourth and final reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 4654 and the property at 939 Walls Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4654.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Towner. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 10 pertains to fourth and final reading of City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4473 for a site-specific text amendment to the A3 agricultural and resource zone at 1875 Pipeline Road. Staff recommendations that council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4473.
It's moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor Marsden. Any discussion? Yes, we have some speakers. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. A couple questions. One, have the neighbors around this property been consulted on this particular plan? And if so, what was their response?
Yes, through your worship. Staff have met with the neighbors on the northern properties, the two specifically directly to the north. Of course, following the public hearing, they can no longer give the input, but they did work with staff. Their comments were given back to the applicant, and the applicant did their best to address their concerns. Part of that was a change in the business hours on Saturday that you might note from the first report that came forward, where it was noted that they were going to be consistent hours throughout the week, including Saturday, and then they've changed that now from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturday. So this was sort of a meeting the neighbors sort of halfway in terms of the proposed times.
Great, thank you. And then the only other question was the berm that's being built between this property and the neighbors to the north. It looks to me on the drawings that it doesn't go over the statutory right of way, and I'm just wondering, is it possible for it to go further west, or I think it's west, yeah. Or is it deemed not necessary? It's providing enough sound control.
Yes, through your worship. So the berm is actually more of a visual than acoustical piece to the site. The acoustics are actually, there's a full acoustical report done, and they're mostly handled by the building and the acoustical wall that's being built, the 3-meter high acoustical wall. And the berm itself is more of a visual piece, although it might actually add to some of the acoustical deadening of the site. It actually stops short of the right-of-way to the west. There's going to be two. There's one for the pedestrian path on the east against the river, and it, of course, stops short of that so that the path can go forward. And the one to the right is a right-of-way that has some pipes in it. So bringing the berm over that would make it much more challenging to get to those pipes. So as a result, it was pulled back. It's a total of 9 feet in height, and it's planted with hydro seed grass and 9 Douglas firs on the top of the berm, which was all designed by the applicant's landscape architect to sort of both survive the conditions on top of the berm and what the landscape architect thought would be the best sort of suited tree species to fulfill its task of creating a bit of a visual buffer on top of the berm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zerillo.
Well, thank you. I have some questions on page 3 under discussion and analysis. There's 5 or 6 bullets there. And I did have questions on bullet number 5. It talks about a qualified environmental professional that relates to protecting the adjacent SPIAs. And I know recently we had some conversations at this council table about the qualified environmental professionals that were engaged up on Burkina Mountain, and they were only looking for certain things in relation to fish habitat. So my question here on number 5 for the qualified environmental professional, what will they specifically be advising on?
Staff have an answer?
Yes, Your Worship. So recognizing that the environmental aspect is not my specific specialty, my understanding of the report is that basically it looked at the different criteria that the qualified environmental professional looks at to assess the specific riparian criteria in this area. Part of that I know is to do with the actual slopes around the river. So in this case, the streamside protection enhancement area at the Coquitlam River at this location was determined to be 15 meters. That will be fenced as part of this application. Currently, it's unfenced. There's also going to be some replanting at the direction of the qualified environmental professional along Mantle Creek, where there's currently been some loss of some of the riparian area in that area through the years. And in addition, of course, there's the trail outside of that, which will then have another fence on wrapping the property sort of where the industrial uses are taking place. So there'll be actually two fences sort of stopping any sort of potential implications in the of the use impacting the SPIA itself.
Okay, so it's addressing erosion, and it's addressing ecological impacts to the SPIAs. It doesn't have anything to do with the protection of fish or any impacts on the water. Like, I guess I'm trying to understand what is the qualified environmental professional being hired to protect? Because this was what on Burke Mountain, this was the disconnect, is that the fish were taken care of, but the security piece wasn't necessarily being taken care of. So what are they being hired to protect or look for? Because I know you talked about the fence, and I understand that, but why the fence? Like, is it erosion that they want to stop? Is it things going? Is it contaminants moving in? Is it for safety reasons? Like, what is the whole? What are we going to ask this qualified environmental professional to advise on? I'm really trying to understand what is a qualified environmental professional, because from what I've heard in the past is they're looking at one specific thing. So what's the specific thing they're looking at?
Yes, through your worship. So qualified environmental professional is a biologist. They have to meet certain educational criteria that's established through the province. In terms of this specific case, the fence itself, and in most cases, it's meant as a sort of a buffer to keep essentially people and anything sort of potential other encroachments that might happen from an adjacent use out of the SPIA, and it's just sort of a visual and physical barricade to ensure that the plants and soil and other vegetation and any other basically flora or fauna within the SPIA is not disturbed. Okay. So that's sort of the determination of putting the fence along there, and that's why that's done. In addition, basically, the qualified environmental professional, again, looks through their different purviews that they have, and they essentially look at the trees, the slopes, and any sort of potential for sediment erosion. So all these factors are taken into account. Of course, they would also look at things like runoff from the site and anything that might be going on to ensure that essentially that it's safely fenced. That's their mandate, and it's everything that's in there that has an ecological benefit is protected. And in this particular case, again, because there was some areas along Mantle Creek that had some loss of vegetation, there'll be a replanting plan, quite a substantial one, at the direction of the qualified environmental professional to sort of basically bring those areas back to their natural state.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, talking about the bullet number 6, it talks about the 3-meter wide trail adjacent to the SPIA. In keeping with the City Park and Rec Cultural Draft Master Plan, and I'm just wondering if that is different from the current regulations. I mean, I've heard some speak that our SPIAs are actually parks, but I'm not sure if that's possible if it's private land. So is there a reason why we refer to the Cultural Draft Master, Parks and Rec Cultural Draft Master Plan in this bullet number 6?
Yes, through your worship. So in this case, we're referring to the city's Parks, Recreation, and Culture Draft Master Plan due to the fact that we're looking at actually having a trail outside of the streamside and protection and enhancement area. So it's not an environmentally sensitive feature. It's sort of an addition to that. It runs along the side of that. This is something that was identified in this draft master plan, and through the working of this application, we became aware that at this location that was something that we'd be looking at having there in the future. And we also, of course, have the parkland directly to the south, so it's sort of a good place to start putting that trail through. And the applicant was generous enough to voluntarily provide this pedestrian statutory right-of-way so that a trail could be put up along the east side of the property between the industrial use and the streamside protection enhancement area in the future.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So then I just had three other questions. So I my memory may not be perfect here, but I thought there was a covenant that went along with the first few readings of this. I don't see reference to it in this report.
Are you referring to the covenant on the vegetation riparian and stream protection?
No. There was another covenant that was involved with this.
That is in here.
Application.
Which,
Was there a sound covenant? There was some other covenant that was part of this application, I thought.
Yes, through your worship, maybe I can clarify. So didn't call them out in the report specifically all as covenants, but in fact the development agreement, the operation agreement, they are actually restrictive covenants. They're Section 219 covenants that are registered to title.
Yep.
So in that case, all of the sound attenuation is actually handled through the development agreement in terms of the design of the buildings and the concrete acoustical sound wall to ensure that those things are done as promised. Further to that, the operations agreement, which is also a restrictive covenant, is registered to title to ensure that all of the things that were determined by that the sound attenuation report are actually followed as the business is operated on site.
Thank you for jogging my memory on that. So I have to say I was surprised to see new build. I wasn't expecting a new building. I was expecting that the current building was going to be soundproof. So is that something that I missed first time around, or was this something new that came after the first couple of readings?
If I could, Your Worship, or Chair, just to help Jonathan out here. No, there was a portion of the existing building that's being retained. There is also to be additional construction to enable much of the operation to take place within an enclosed building as part of the overall sound management. And so, and that's been one of the reasons for the lengthy time it's taken since Council last considered this to tonight, is there had to be a permit application to go through the process to allow for that construction in a suitable manner. So there was a new building addition.
And was that presented at the public hearing?
I believe there was an overall site plan, I'm not testing my memory, that showed the various works that were proposed, the storage area, the access area, the berm, the sound attenuation wall, those buildings that would be retained, and I think the new construction as well.
I don't remember talking about new construction at all. I'm sorry that I didn't ask for that earlier than now. Is there a way to get a site map that was shown at the public hearing? Site plan?
Okay. My memory is being assisted here. They're pointing out from the October 28th, 2014 staff report to Council, and it's sort of setting out what sort of the sequence would be and who would do what when. And one of those is that the applicant would be required to submit a building permit application for the construction of the new building and the concrete noise attenuation wall adjacent to the building, which must be ready for issuance prior to fourth and final. So that's why it's taken the time to get to where we are tonight. They had to submit that BP application. That had to be reviewed along with the sound attenuation. So that was part of the original plan.
Okay, so in that report that you're holding, is there a site plan map?
I'm told there's not.
Okay, and then my final comment is just about the business hour restrictions. So I see it's got 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I totally understand that for construction materials to want to get out in the morning makes a lot of sense. I'm concerned about having the movement of materials up that way. at school drop-off time, especially as the SkyTrain comes in, and we're going to have people coming down Burke Mountain onto David, rushing to the SkyTrain in the morning. So I don't know how to overcome that, but I totally understand for potentially concrete and things that are being made that need to come down the hill, but I'd rather not things coming up the hill in the morning if it's possible. I'm just putting that out there that it's the residential area that it's going to have to come down through, so I'm concerned about that. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Zarrillo. And I just want to, just a couple of points of clarification. One, this is a land use rezoning text amendment that we're looking at. As such, it controls what the land can be used for. It doesn't necessarily specifically say this building has to be here or this building. There's nothing in this rezoning that would prevent them from taking a building down or putting another building up there if they have their development permit and things like that. Is that correct? So there could be additions to the site if it's consistent with the zoning. Is that right?
Yes, through your worship. So the development agreement that's being in place controls all the buildings that are proposed at this time to be put on site. With that being said, in the future, if another building was required, there is some language in the operations agreement that sets out some standards that they'd have to follow, very similar to the ones that have been adopted today. But it doesn't necessarily stop the addition of a new building. With that in mind, though, also there's the good neighbor agreement that's attached, which means that the owner of the lands would be obligated to do consultation with the neighbors on those properties that are noted in the report to the north.
Right. Okay, and one other point of clarification, something Councillor Zarrillo brought up. It was her question regarding the city's Park, Rec, and Culture draft master plan. And I took that question to mean, why are you referring to the draft master plan when we have a final master plan? And I didn't think we got an answer to that. So is this just a typo in here that we should be referring to the final master plan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's in the draft. It's in final draft, as council is well aware. I think it's just a typo. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Any other speakers? No? Has this been moved and seconded? All in favor? Opposed? Carried with Councillor Zarrillo opposed. Mr. Clarke.
Item 11 pertains to zoning amendment bylaws number 4725 and 4726, and the properties at 559, 567, 571, 577, and 581 Clarke Road. Staff recommendation is that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4725. First reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4726. The bylaws numbers 4725 and 4726 be referred to public hearing. And 4, that staff be instructed to complete the following items prior to Council's consideration of fourth and final reading, should Council grant second and third readings to these bylaws. These items are registration of the subdivision, B, completion of a housing agreement, C, registration of a right-of-way in favor of the city over the publicly accessible plaza between the buildings and walkways, D, registration of access easements between the market and rental buildings for underground parking access and shared visitor and commercial parking, E, registration of a restrictive covenant for density sharing. F, registration of an access easement in favor of 565 Clarke Road to protect vehicle access through the underground parkade. G, registration of a restrictive covenant to ensure all commercial and visitor parking spaces be accessible by both buildings. H, approval of the servicing plans. I, transportation planning approval of transportation demand management plan. J, reduce the number of proposed small car spaces to a maximum of 30%. And K, widen the narrow street to the west of the site through road dedication to the required 10 meters.
It's moved by Councillor Asmussen and seconded by Councillor Marsden. We have some people interested in speaking on this issue. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Before it gets to public hearing, loading zones, how many?
You want that answered now, or do you want it answered at public hearing?
Well, it doesn't look like anyone's going to jump up and say, surprise, I've got 5. So by public hearing would be fine. I'm hoping that there will be one for each building, and I don't know how you're handling the commercial in a loading zone as well, because there's quite a few commercial spaces. I'm just going down the A, B, C's, and D's that the clerk just read out. And the registration of a restrictive covenant for all commercial and visitor parking be accessible to both buildings. How do we deal with that if it's a restaurant where all of the visitor parking for both buildings could well be full if it's a very successful business? I'd like to know how you're dealing with that. The proposed small car spaces, I agree with staff, and widen the narrow street. That's something that's really important to me. I want to compliment the developer, especially on the ground. I'm looking at the ground photos, which is not really to do with the rezoning, but it's very nice on the ground, and I'm looking for the wow factor. So lots of wow on the ground. I could use a little more wow up in the sky, but it looks like a very nice building. On to the unit types. You've got 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. Can you let me know what the square footages of those are? And is it possible that we could negotiate with the developer for a few more family suites in the 4 bedrooms and maybe less 1 and more 2 and 3? And the parking, of course, is always a concern for me, but I think this looks like a really nice development. The Airbnb and the 30 consecutive days. I understand in Vancouver that the 30 consecutive days is they're just buying suites and then renting them out by the month. And that doesn't bode well for me. I'm trying to get rental suites for the citizens of our city, not for Airbnb. I don't know how we handle Airbnb, but there has to be a way. This isn't satisfactory to me. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson, Marsden, and Wilson are next up. So Councillor Asmundson.
Well, thank you very much. Very interesting proposal being put forward here for this development. I like some of the ideas with it. I like the plan and where it's been created, that we're, through the housing affordability strategy, using some of the density to create a 15-story, 101-unit market rental building. We always talk about the need and being creative. I want to thank staff, all involved, for finding a solution to getting us more market rental, and I like that a lot. I will echo some of the comments, and I will support staff on the 2 items that they do not support in these recommendations. Is the reduction of 1 meter on the road width from 10 meters down to 9 meters. I think it's appropriate to keep it at 10 meters for proper circulation in that area. I also approve they're keeping at the small car spaces at 30%, not the proposed or requested 47%. I have a great difficulty with small car spaces. I would like them reduced below 30% in our bylaw, but that's what our bylaw states right now. So I will stick to that part, but I agree with staff on that. The one thing I would like to, and I don't know if staff has put this out to the developer, and we've requested on some developments, while it may not be purpose-built market rental, but we've asked a number of times that developers considered a 25% within the strata document going forward, so that 25% of those units can be rented out, and the new strata council can't change that. I look around the cities, we talk about dark condos not being rented out, and a lot of them, I think, are because a lot of strata councils don't want rentals, so people buy for investor and leave them dark and not getting them rented out. And I don't want to see that happen here. I want to see if there's going to be rental buildings or units to be rented, that they are rented out and they add to that market rental stock. The more we can add to that market rental stock, hopefully will help bring down the market rental prices and increase the vacancy rate for market rentals. That would be my hope on that part there. But for the rest of it, I'm very interested in this proposal. I'm very interested to hear what the public will say at the public hearing, and I will move this forward onto a public hearing, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. I'll agree with my colleagues. It's a very interesting proposal, creative with regard to the density transfer, so it's nice to see the affordable housing strategy, some of the components of the framework start to be implemented and come forward. So looking forward to hearing the public's feedback on that. In looking at the number of units that are the 3-bedroom units, I'm interested in that there doesn't seem to be a great number here. And again, if we talk about, young families needing that little bit of extra room, bedroom for the kids, maybe an office for mom or dad who are working from home part-time. I'm wondering if there might be some additional information you can get for public hearing in terms of the numbers of 2 bedrooms and den. Because I think what we see with a lot of them, that den criteria doesn't have the bedroom component, but it certainly can be utilized as such because of the size and closets, as well as the 1-bedroom and den. So interested in those 2 pieces. As well, it speaks about the parking. Could make some sense, but in the report itself, on page 10, the applicant has agreed to provide TDM measures such as co-op cars and transit passes. I'd be interested in a little bit more detail around what's being suggested. 1-year transit passes are very different than co-op cars in terms of addressing the parking relaxation, in terms of what it will do for the long-term residents. So if we could get a little bit more detail on that, if they're at that point, or perhaps you've got some information now. Through the chair.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if they've got it now or if they've...
Oh, there seems to be an answer there.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Marsden. Just in response to your earlier question about the 2-bedroom dens and the 1-bedroom dens, right now many of the dens are large enough to accommodate another bed within them. They're not designed with windows and or closets. So in the market tower, there's about 60 2-bedroom dens that could have the possibility of adding a bed if they wanted to or needed to. In that case, in terms of what the TDM plan may include, all we've established at this point is roughly a value of there'll be $660,000 worth of TDM measures to be determined with the applicant and transportation planning staff. So far, the applicant has indicated that they would include an end-of-trip bike facility within the parkade for commercial users, as well as they would have 2 shared cars, co-op cars that they would provide, and they would come to the table with some transit passes as well. We don't know the exact value of that level of work, so we'll continue to work with the applicant to get that TDM plan in place. However, it would get to a value of $660,000.
Okay. I'd be interested in that. Again, transit passes are nice. Co-op cars are nicer. So if it's a matter of getting to 3 as opposed to 2 of the co-op cars, by foregoing some of the transit passes, I'd be interested in seeing that as a possible option. Again, just looking at the long-term use here, I really see this as appealing to some of the younger folks that are going to come into our community and look to live here, look to raise their families here, and look to get around to the areas that perhaps SkyTrain doesn't service right there. So look forward to hearing what the public has to say about this, and I'm sure there'll be some comments.
Right, thank you.
Thanks for your work to point.
We'll take your suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Can you walk us through how the density is being transferred on the 2 separate spots here?
If it takes too long, you could jog.
I'm not a very fast jogger, so walking is about as fast as I can go these days. Yes, I can help walk through some of that. I believe it's attachment 6 and 7 in the council report. Probably best visually displays how the density would transfer. Essentially what the applicant is doing is partnering with the Kevington Group to the north, as well as they've acquired 4 properties themselves at 559, 567, 571, as well as 577 Clarke. They would consolidate all the properties into one pool from a density perspective and allocate all the market density, or the large majority of the market density, on what would remain as the Marcon property, minus 590 square meters for the commercial podium of the market, the purpose-built rental building. So all the density would be transferred onto the Marcon site with 590 meters left on the Kevington site, and then the rental portion would be the bonus density, if you will, for generated through the housing affordability strategy. So that's shown both within the map from how it's transferring from property to property, as well as visually of what that density means to the height of the tower.
In the in that diagram, the portion that's green, approximately what would be the dimensions of that, or the square footage of that area? It says a transfer of 49,000 square feet. I'm just curious as to what the actual approximate size would be.
Of how much density is being transferred?
No, sorry, just the size of that, the area of that piece of property.
Well, its density is 4.5, so roughly 1,000 meters. 1,000 times 4.5 would get you to 4,500, so pretty close to 1,000 square meters.
When this density is transferred, does that affect the CAC calculation?
CACs are calculated on the base density. So when you pool all the 5 properties together and you calculate the density from 0 to 2.5 times that cumulative lot area is what is subject to the CACs. And then from the 2.5 to the 4.5 would be the density bonus portion.
Right. So because we're taking 3 parcels and combining them into one, in effect, the CAC calculation amount would be less because you have less square footage in the 2.5.
Whether it was 2.5 calculated over 3 separate lots or 2.5 calculated cumulatively, it'd still be the same amount.
I'm just trying to picture that. Okay. Yeah. Great. The parkade entrance, it's one parkade entrance for both buildings?
That is correct.
And in the diagrams that they showed for potential building to the south of there, would that potential building use that same parkade entrance? They talked about the knockouts in the wall and that sort of thing. Would it be one parkade entrance for all 3 towers potentially?
If the neighboring property, when they chose to develop, opted to go that route, it would be available to help. The applicant at this time has opted to put a right away over an easement over their property that would allow for that future access if they chose to do so. However, at the time of that application, they'd have to make that determination, and we'd go through that review process, and we'd probably be encouraging them to use one central access point.
And one central access point would be enough for up to 800 cars?
We'd have it reviewed by the transportation engineer at the time, but it should be able to accommodate that level of vehicles.
The other question about the potential third building, we have a minimum distance between towers of, is it 30 meters?
It's 25 meters for buildings greater than 12 stories in height.
And so this one looks like it's closer, but it's not 12 stories in height. Is that correct? Or?
Well, they've showed a number of 3 different development options. One was, I believe, a mid-rise or a low-rise, and there was a mid-rise and a higher building. And the ones that got up to the 12 stories are separated by more than 25 meters, or right at 25 meters at least.
Okay. How will the rental parking spots be allocated? Will be in a lottery to get a parking spot, or will you pay extra for a parking spot? Do you know how that's going to be allocated?
I don't know the specifics. However, in conversations with the operator of the rental building, he has indicated that there would be an additional charge to secure a parking spot. Presumably, he would rent them to first come, first serve. And once he was out of parking spots, he would then rent the units without a parking.
And how will the visitor parking spots be regulated or policed?
In order to support the variance, staff have requested that the applicant ensure that all parking spot is scramble, essentially for visitor and commercial, and shared between the two buildings, so it increases the supply of visitor and or commercial parking, which typically have offsetting demand times.
What's to stop a renter from parking in the commercial or visitor spots is what I'm wondering more.
From what I understand from the owner, the Kevington Group plans on owning and operating the commercial, or at least be leasing out those commercial units, so they'd have a stake in ensuring that they're operating as per the agreement.
Great. And I guess my last question, on attachment 16, it's got the designation of special needs housing. And I know that that's kind of what it's categorized in our housing affordability strategy, I believe, but would market rental be a more appropriate designation than special needs housing?
Through the Local Government Act, the provision for allowing the additional density is for special needs or affordable housing, and those are undefined terms, and we've determined that market rental is part of that special needs or affordable housing.
So we're kind of relegated to use that term because it's the provincial term, is that?
I feel it fits that term.
I think most people, when they see special needs housing, they think other things, but okay. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Towner.
Thank you. It's a very exciting project. I'm going to echo a lot of my colleagues' comments and just say I'm very happy to see the 2 action items from the housing affordability strategy on here. I will also admit that I was a little bit disappointed to only see 29 3-bedroom units of the 465. I was wondering if that was negotiable. But you said there's 62 bedroom and den units in the market side, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so that gives a little bit more. I also was going to ask for more information regarding the TDM, and I want to echo Councillor Marsden's comments in saying that I think 3 shared cars would be better than 2, but I also think the transit passes are great, and I'm wondering what another rental that we just approved, the transit were only going to be offered for the first year. But here you say it's $660,000 worth. So I know we'll get more information. The report says we'll get more information on that. But
yeah, we'll continue to work with the applicant should council forward this to a public hearing and ultimately grant 2nd and 3rd reading, and we'll finalize the details of that TDM plan. And it would include a combination of items, which may include the transit passes, and depending on the value of the co-op cars plus the end-of-trip facility that they provide, will determine how much is left, and then that would determine how long the transit passes might be for. I should also clarify that the 2-bedroom den units, all 60 of them are over 900 square feet. They start around 908 square feet and get up to 928 and 944 square feet. So they are quite sizable units as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvie.
You're welcome.
I have another question. It was on social media this weekend, and a resident inquired about the elevators. I'm just curious, if after a certain height, is there more elevators put in buildings? There was a comment that in these taller buildings, there's quite a long wait for elevators. So that piqued my curiosity. Do you know if in a building of this size, there'd be an extra elevator?
I know there are some building code implications the higher you go with elevators and how the building is structured. And from discussions with the applicant, once they get to 49 stories, there are some different construction complications that come into play, and they can give you far more details on that than I can. But from what we've heard from a functional perspective, there is kind of a demand on elevators, and the more units you have, typically the more elevators you have. In this particular case, the building would have 3 elevators.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm happy to move this along to the public hearing. Thank you.
on the point of social media, I'm guilty of putting this up a few days ago and getting a lot of different comments about different aspects. Made us really think about it. I'll have some more comments after Councillor Zerillo speaks, last speak on our list right now.
So I'm making a note because thank you for reminding me about that, because it's been discussion around the council table about social media input. And if you've got that posted and something comes after the public hearing closes, are we in trouble? So that's interesting, right? So I remember, I don't know how long ago, planning and development saying that the applications are becoming more complex. After the clerk read how many? K, up to K on the recommendations. I found that very interesting. And, you know, congratulations to Mr. Jarvie and those that were working on this application, because it's quite in-depth. My eyes are not as good as they used to be, and I find it really difficult to read the small ones like attachment 13 and 14. So if I ask some questions where it's on those maps, I'm sorry. The first one is about garbage. So with a development of this size, there's going to be lots of garbage, and there's going to be potentially lots of green waste. I know we're working on recycling green waste for multi-family developments, and of course recycling. And some of the stuff we've heard even on our smaller multi-families is that people tend to take down large items into the garbage areas, furniture, things like that. So I just want to understand, what is the size of the space we have for green waste, recycling, and garbage?
I don't have the specifics in front of me about the exact dimensions. However, there's zoning bylaw requirements in terms of size for solid waste collection and recycling. And this application has been reviewed against those requirements and does comply with the minimum sizes needed for the development of this size.
So could I ask for, if this goes through to public hearing, just to have like a page on that? That would be awesome, just to understand, because I do know from some residents that live in multifamily that the current space for garbage and recycling is sometimes not adequate, and I just want to make sure. I thought it was funny that there is actually a picture of someone walking a dog. We have potentially up to 400 dogs or more that could be living in this area, and I don't see under the amenity space any talk of space for dogs. Where did we see it? I didn't see it in the amenity space.
Artificial grass for dogs.
Whereabouts?
In
the city-owned piece?
No, on the rooftop podiums in their amenity space, they do have artificial grassed areas, which would be for dogs, and both buildings do have them.
Okay. Does it call it out specifically that you've got to take your dog to the, what is it, 11th floor or something like that?
It's on the top of the podium, so it would be on the second level.
Okay, so guide me to where that is in the report, because I don't see it under the amenity space.
It is on page 8, bullet point 2, under amenity space. A landscape podium rooftop with basketball court, sandbox, artificial grass for dogs, and outdoor kitchen with barbecue area.
I said I watched the artificial grass. I didn't watch the 4 dogs. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Okay, and then my last thing for a request for public hearing is kind of follow up to Councillor Wilson's comments about attachment 16. How we talk about special needs housing. This also happened on our foster development. I'd just like to spell it out for the people that come for the public hearing, that some of this density is coming from this special needs housing. I know it's going to be of interest to people with disabilities and things like that, so I would like, just if we could spell it out, that that's not what this means. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zerillo. And I just had a few comments as well. The sometimes we lose sight of the forest for the trees, and there's so many details in here. My first response to this was not a detail-oriented one, but one looking at the whole picture. First thing I noticed, of course, was what I think is the tallest building proposal, a proposal for the tallest building at Coquitlam, which certainly makes it stand out. And so that'll be very interesting to see what the public thinks about that. And I definitely would like to hear from them on that, and I will be supporting first reading. And the second one, of course, is how our housing affordability strategy, which we worked so hard and so long to put into place, we're seeing the fruits of all of that labor now with this proposal, where we're seeing a purpose-built 15-story rental tower with 101 units. I do believe this sort of thing would not be coming forward were it not for all the work that council and staff put in to put forward the housing affordability strategy. And that's something to be, even the proposal itself, if it doesn't pass or whatever, I'm not prejudging, just the proposal itself, something to be celebrated. We're seeing the fruits. I guess we haven't harvested them yet. They're still on the tree, and we haven't enjoyed their sweet taste yet, but they're there. And that's something, that's the big picture that really hit me when I looked at this. A very dramatic, tall, grand building. It'll take some getting used to, and I'm just the idea of it. But I did jog my memory. 49 stories is pretty high, but it's happening all over the suburbs. And outside of Vancouver, there's probably more tall towers being built than inside of the city of Vancouver now. Around Brentwood and Gilmore, there's no less than 46 towers planned, ranging from 25 to 65 stories. The Lougheed Town Centre, we heard about this quite recently, has at least 23 towers up to 65 stories are being planned. These are much taller than what we're looking at here. The other sort of big picture thing is that kind of a serendipitous coming together. Earlier today, I took part in the official announcement that the Evergreen extension of SkyTrain will come to Coquitlam, will open on December 2nd. And of course, this sort of proposal that we're seeing in front of us today is directly linked to the fact that SkyTrain is coming. Will carry 70,000 people a day between Vancouver and the Tri-Cities, and will allow for developments like this, more affordable housing forms, both rental and purchase, to take place. We've been seeing that sort of development proposals and developments period taking place in anticipation of the SkyTrain coming. And I thought it was kind of neat the way these two things come together. This is on our desk to consider as probably the biggest, most eye-catching example of what SkyTrain has a potential, how it has the potential to transform our city on the same day that we know when SkyTrain is going to actually open and start serving us. So it's pretty significant. So those are my sort of my big picture, my forest comments. A lot of the tree comments are somewhat similar to some of my colleagues. We have expressed over the years many times around this table, we'd like to see, if possible, more 3-bedroom units to support family formation and give people more flexibility. There are difficulties there, I know, and there are expenses, but we certainly like to see that happen. I believe it was the development on Foster, the Blue Sky development, where we had 3 purpose-built condo towers approved and a market rental tower, a smaller building approved, where during that discussion we talked about those condo towers having provisions in place to make sure that the individual condominiums could be rented out and couldn't be the rentals would not be prevented by the strata councils. So that's something that Councillor Asmundson brought up, and that's something that I'm consistently in favor of. So would like to see that going forward. So those are my big points. Really my bigger reaction is the big picture one, and how this is quite something. It's the housing affordability strategy, Evergreen Line, 2 big things coming together today in front of us, and I'll definitely vote in favor of first reading. Seeing no other discussion, I don't think we've had this moved or seconded. Do we have a mover?
It has been moved.
What has? I'm sorry. Okay.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Marsden.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for that. Asmussen and Marsden. Any further discussion? All in favor of first reading? Opposed? That carries unanimously. See you at the public hearing.
Next item 12, pertains to zoning bylaw text amendment to permit a dental practitioner in the C1 local commercial zone. This is bylaw number 4720 at 1655 Como Lake Avenue. Staff recommendation is that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4720. The bylaw number 4720 will be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Zerillo, seconded by Councillor Marsden. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Sorry, there is discussion. Councillor Marsden.
Thank you. Just a question. It speaks to the fact that C1 zoning is supposed to be for daily household or personal needs. And I'm wondering the scope of this. I look at a dental office, doctor's offices. Those, to me, would seem to fall into that category of daily personal needs. And this particular type of location would seem to fit that more than anything else. A destination place, someone needs to get to their doctor, their dentist, their chiropractor. This complex, because of the right in, the right out, where it's located. So are we looking just for this one specific unit, or would we contemplate this for the entire building and say, you know what, we wouldn't necessarily no to this, should that be the will of the public hearing?
Worship.
McIntyre.
I'll respond more broadly in terms of the place, the C1 zone, and our lineup of commercial zones around the specific site. Jonathan may want to speak to that as well. It is correct. You'd read the description of the intent of the C1 zone, and what's being proposed would seem to match with that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we're supporting the text amendment for the site, because more broadly. One of the things we've got on our to-do list is to review the commercial zones, and I think there's a need to certainly revisit and maybe realign some of the commercial zones and allow broader opportunities through some of the zones that way. We're just not there yet. We haven't been able to haven't had a chance to get started with that work. So this one's come forward with a sort of a site-specific proposal we think makes sense given its location on an arterial. The greater percentage of the building was something that was discussed through the process, and this was what was agreed on, and maybe Jonathan can amplify on that.
Yeah, through your worship, just further to that, the C1 zone, of course, being number one in our commercial zones, is one of the longer-standing commercial zones that we have. As a result, it does typically have a lot of older type uses in there, some of them which are no longer currently as relevant. But with that being said, it is a very delicate zone in that it's actually scattered throughout the city in several different locations. And as part of our staff's review, we looked at this and we tried to kind of find a more broad look that might look at where this could work in other locations, but it just deemed a little bit challenging at this time without a more full comprehensive review than was looked at with this application. That's because many of these sites are actually right in the middle of neighborhoods and on local streets, sometimes with limited parking. So we wanted to be cautious not to sort of open things up too much at this time without that full review. So as a result, this one looks at this site specifically because it did meet the test of the criteria that we look at in terms of the type of uses we want to see in this location, both in terms of some of our broader OCP policies and the actual C1 zone. But for the time being, we've looked at this site-specific amendment to help sort of ensure that this development is successful, but also to ensure that we don't sort of have this use turn up with possibly high parking demands in neighborhoods where it might not be appropriate.
Okay, that's fair. So through the chair then to Mr. McIntyre, is this in the work plan for 2017 to look at the full C1, or is it just one of those when we get to it, we will? I know there's a lot of priorities in your department, and I don't know that this is the highest one, but...
Mr. McIntyre, the side of your desk, perhaps?
It is a priority. The commercial zone review we've had on our, like I said, our to-do list for a little while now, and very seriously. We want to get on with this. There's these sort of questions that crop up every now and then around the C1 zone, sometimes the C2 zone. We've got some other zones in there I think they're just not being utilized. I think we're missing some opportunities compared to some of the other municipalities around the Lower Mainland that allow for mixed-use development of a certain scale. So I think it's certainly time for that, and it is on our 2017 work program. It would probably be a little later in the year before we get started because we've got a lot of other things we're juggling at the moment, but we will get to it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the vote now. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 13 pertains to Parking Management Amendment Bylaw number 4721. Staff recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to Parking Management Amendment Bylaw number 4721.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen reluctantly and by Councillor Marsden belatedly. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just was wondering about the handicap stalls in the parking lot. For 150 spots, there's 3 handicap spots total, and I'm just wondering, is that a typical ratio?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, it complies with our bylaw requirements, and 2% is typical. We also have a number of stalls designated for persons with disabilities that are actually at the station itself, with the envision being that they would use those ones first and that these really would be ancillary and kind of used after the stalls at the actual station were occupied.
So there's long-term spots at the stations or
for
disabilities?
Yes, there is.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. No further speakers. Councillor Towner.
Thank you. Can you just clarify for me, maybe I'm just reading this wrong. The on-street parking is either 75 cents an hour or $1 an hour, depending on what side of Guildford it's on. And the park and ride lot is to a max of $3.75 a day. Is the on-street parking to a max of $3.75 a day, or if you're there for 8 hours and 9 hours, is it $9 or 9 times 75?
Mr. Mooney.
Through the chair to Councillor Towner, our agreement with the province requires us to create a minimum of 100 stalls on the site and a minimum of 50 stalls on the street that would be available for long-term parking at the prevailing rates. And we've settled on $3.75 per day as the cap. We have a number of stalls that are on the street, and our parking regulations are in effect for 10 hours during the day, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if you park outside those 58 designated park and ride stalls, you would pay 75 cents an hour, and you could pay up to $7.50. What we're doing here is we're establishing a minimum of 58 stalls that would be available at the discounted rate. They would be properly signed with to indicate that these are park and ride stalls and that they would be available at that discounted rate. We suspect that will drive the daily parkers into those stalls. The other areas would be more likely to be used for short-term parking at the 75 cent per hour rate, although it doesn't preclude anybody from paying the full $7.50 and parking there all day.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And then if someone parks there at 6 in the morning because they start work at downtown at 7, at first till 8 o'clock it's free. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't kick in until 8 a.m.?
Through the chair, our payment system will accept payments in advance but not charge the fee in advance, so they would pay for the day, or if they paid for till noon, if they paid for 4 hours, they could pay that at 6 o'clock, pay for 4 hours, and that would get them till noon. They wouldn't be charged starting at the time that they park there.
Great, thank you very much for the clarification.
Councillor Zurillo.
I just had a quick question. I don't see any red in what used to be the Evergreen parking lot there that's right at the station. So will the parking that's at the station still belong to the theater and the Innovation Center?
Mr. Mooney?
Through the chair, there is no planned park and ride in the existing Innovation Center and the Chamber of Commerce and the theater. There is separate from our lot. We did sell a portion of land to the project, and they have parking within their area, including a drop-off, a kiss and ride area, some parking stalls for their service technicians and that type of stuff. But it's not park and ride activity.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask a little bit about the logistics of flow, because I anticipate that there will be people coming south down Pine Tree. Is there any places on Pine Tree where they can do U-turns to get into those 30 stalls on the street? Because I can see in the morning people doing crazy U-turns to get themselves a park across the street if they're coming south.
Through the chair, we do have some wayfinding signage that's predominantly focused at the 110 stalls that is in the lot. So people southbound on Pine Tree Way, the short answer to your question is no, they wouldn't be able to make a U-turn on Pine Tree Way. The only break in the median is at Town Center Boulevard, and it's a signalized intersection, and it certainly wouldn't be appropriate to do it there. Those southbound on Pine Tree Way could access the parking lot with the 110 stalls at the corner, and they will be directed by wayfinding signs to that site.
And where is the entrance? Sorry, Mr. Mooney, where is the entrance? Is it?
Through the chair, our design provides for two entrances to the 110 stalls. One is located on the south side of Guilford Way, immediately east of Pine Tree Way. It's a right in and right out. Okay. And then down at the very south end, if you at the long skinny part of the red, there will be another driveway that's right in and right out on Glen Drive. So that would, the combination of those two driveways does facilitate most directions. The people that might need to do a little bit of pre-trip planning are those that are coming from Pipeline Road and approach it from the Glen Drive side. And again, we'll have wayfinding to direct the people that are coming from the northeast towards the Glen Drive.
When does that wayfinding, because we heard today it's going to be December 2nd opening, will that wayfinding go up before that? Or are the parking lots even open before that?
Through the chair, we were all excited this morning with December 2nd. Our commitment to the province for this parking lot obligates us to provide it by December 31st.
December 31st?
That's our obligation with the province. Our current contract with the contractor, this 110 stall site, is under construction now. Our contract has a completion date of December 15th, okay, which is dependent on weather. We have the 50 stalls on street in place now, and we are confident that we'll be able to have those signed and our pay stations reprogrammed in advance of December 2nd. And in talking with our construction people this morning, following the announcement, we're going to try and do everything we can to get that parking lot open by December 2nd or 5th as the first Monday. But again, contractually, the commitment is December 15th.
Thank you very much. So last question that's coming to my mind. Those 30 stalls and the 13 and the 5 and the 8, the street stalls, they are also open to regular residents of Coquitlam too. If someone just wanted to go walk in Town Center Park or something, they could still park there?
Through the chair, our agreement with the province is not exclusive. We have the ability to first come, first serve, and also our commitment with the province is Monday to Friday. We plan on having these fees in place Monday to Saturday, which is our normal operations there, and they are not exclusive. They are open to the public for all purposes. The park and ride people will be probably the early birds that'll get the parking spot, at least up to the extent that they need them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have a question. This is a series of questions depending on the first answer. Does the city still sell annual parking passes for its recreation center parking lot in this area?
Through the chair, we do still have a resident parking facility pass, $24 per year. It's eligible to Coquitlam residents, and it provides them with the opportunity to park at facilities that they're attending. So, for example, CCAC, Pine Tree Community Center, and the Evergreen Cultural Theatre.
So, yes, those 3 parking lots, all of which are extremely close to the SkyTrain station. So what sort of monitoring will go on to ensure that people who hold these passes aren't using the lots for long-term parking and using them as park and ride lots?
Through the chair, we currently have in place at the Pine Tree Community Center and the CCAC time limits that are and signage that also requires them to actually be parking there for the purpose of visiting that facility. And it's our intention to do the same thing with the Evergreen Cultural Center. In fact, early next week, we're meeting with both the Chamber of Commerce and Jean-Paul from the theater to talk about that very issue as to how we can make sure that their patrons that have the resident pass can still visit their site and take advantage of that annual pass, but that the annual passes are not abused and used for what I term as park and hide to take the SkyTrain.
Park and hide. The same thing might go on at the Coquitlam Public Library parking lot as well, which is a city facility essentially. Have you been in contact with the Coquitlam Public Library to see what sort of extra measures they might take? Their parking lot's very close to the Lincoln Station, of course.
Through the chair, the resident pass isn't it?
No resident pass there. This is
Yeah, and we did
there.
and we did remove it from the Lincoln Westwood lot about 1.5 years ago with council's approval. I haven't had any direct discussions with the library, but I know the rest of the Henderson Center, and I suspect also Coquitlam Center, will also be doing some very close monitoring of their parking to make sure that they're not being abused, particularly over the Christmas season.
Thank you very much. No further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Clarke.
Item 14 pertains to a grant application under the Provincial Asset Management Planning Program. Staff recommendations that Council support the grant application for the project Asset Management Levels of Service Framework Development under the Provincial Asset Management Planning Program.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, seconded by Councillor Towner. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 15 also pertains to applications. This is the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, CWWF applications. Staff recommendations that Council support grant funding applications for the Plateau Water Pump Station Project and the Crouch Water Reservoir Project under the Infrastructure Canada and Province of BC's Clean Water and Wastewater Fund. And 2, the Council approve the municipal portion of the funding required to proceed with projects in 2017 if the CWWF applications are successful.
It's moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Towner. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes, Councillor Zerillo.
I just have some quick discussion about the financial implications. So the second paragraph says the total municipal contribution will be $986 for the Plateau or $583 for Crouch Water. And I'm just wondering if that's in the current budget or if that would come forward for a request in this upcoming budget. It says here that it's already in reserves.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if it's going to come. Will it be slotted? Will it have a slot in the 2017 budget?
Through the chair, yes. These city portions of the fund have been included in the 2017 budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
See no further questions. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 16 pertains to the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief for its meeting of October 28th. Our Metro Vancouver Board representatives are not available to respond to questions, and the staff recommendations that Council receive for information the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief.
Moved by Councillor Towner, seconded by Councillor Marsden. Any discussion? Councillor Zerillo.
Well, there was lots on here, and I've got questions, and can I at least put them out there, and then maybe we can get the answers when they're back?
We defer this then?
It's always possible to defer an item if that's Council's wish.
Okay, then I can go on my annual rant about the Christmas campaign, creating memories, not
That was the
garbage.
first one I saw, yeah.
That's mine. Are you moving deferral?
I'll second deferral. I'll second.
Okay, it's Councillor Marsden, Councillor Asmussen moved deferral. Councillor Zarrell seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Move adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Marsden, second by Councillor Towner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now it's time for a public question period. Does anybody in the public have any questions about anything on tonight's agenda? Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? There are no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.